strongly that immigrants need a place at the table here. At this event, because they're in our neighborhoods, it's not like my neighborhood and their neighborhood. We're all living in the same neighborhoods. And that needs to be acknowledged. And so the other thing I can tell you, although you probably already know it, is that many immigrants who are working at Amazon, at FedEx, in so many other places are paying federal, state, local taxes. They're paying toward my Social Security. They will never collect that. Yeah, they may be using our roads, we all may be sharing the roads, but people who are citizens are actually directly benefiting. And in terms of the role of entrepreneurs, and we'll address that a little bit later, in Cleveland, 8.1% of the business owners in Northeast Ohio were immigrants. That is an astounding number. And 8,300 immigrant entrepreneurs generated over $200 million in business income that may have gone somewhere else. And finally, people working in the industrial sector, manufacturing, immigrants strengthened the local job economy, and the people who did this study in Cleveland believe that it either created, a combination of created or kept 7,600 jobs in Cleveland. So, in the whole state of Ohio, undocumented immigrants paid an estimated $236 million in federal taxes. Not all these numbers jive, which I don't understand. But I think the point is, immigrants are having a huge impact on our economy in many ways. And Ohio residents in immigrant-led households in 2018 had $14 billion of spending power that they're using at Kroger's, that they're using at Walmart, that they're buying gas with, that they're renting apartments or buying houses with. So that is a really important thing, and the city of Cincinnati needs to be recognizing that and assisting people who want to be entrepreneurs. So one of the things people are always speculating is, do the services that the local government, the state, the federal government give to undocumented immigrants, does that actually exceed what the immigrants may be paying in taxes? And there's a lot of back and forth on this. I can tell you that the most recent studies suggest that even when you count in, more schools, and all the other possible services that people are getting, since Hamilton County's so-called indigent care levy, which medical services at a huge discount to low-income people, regardless of whether or not they're immigrants. So there are a lot of estimates on how greater spending power, and then of course tax contributions people would have. So according to the most recent study, if there were a path to legalization for undocumented immigrants, $14 trillion of additional growth could be estimated. So who can tell me what are maybe some of the problems when people are forced to remain in the shadows without a path to legalization? What do you think, Laura?
I think access to information in terms of the rights that they might have as an individual, especially when facing discrimination. You don't know what kind of resources you do or don't have, and putting yourself at risk to potential dangers to try to find those resources is a very genuine fear.
What else? What other kind of risks might someone who's undocumented face that I wouldn't. What do you think?
We had a few instances in my neighborhood where Hispanic people were being mugged practically on the streets at night. You know, they weren't causing anybody any trouble, just maybe coming from one place to another. And I only happened to hear about that like word of mouth. I never
And what neighborhood do you live in?
Carthage.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I never heard anything about it on the news, but I don't watch news all day long,
Mhm.
you know, like a lot of us.
So that is a very real issue. What else? Does anybody have any other ideas of what problems might occur? You talked about rights, and a big issue is workers' rights. And if you don't know what OSHA is, you don't know what the boss is supposed to do, correct? So wage theft is a huge issue. The Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center has recovered hundreds of thousands of dollars of wages stolen by people who deliberately prey on immigrants. I mean, and to a ridiculous degree. Like one place, people were working so many hours of overtime and they would get their check. That overtime would be in their check, and yet they were supposed to go give that overtime amount in cash back to the boss. So they were paying taxes on it and everything else. So what they did for the technology buffs, one of the workers put a camera in the ceiling and actually photographed that transaction. And because of that, all those Hispanic workers in a veterinary clinic have received U visas, which is a special form of visa. But so many other people don't know about that, and of course, far disproportionate number of workplace deaths particularly occur to immigrants. One story I can tell you is behind the Cape was practicing soccer this summer, and with some of his compañeros, and it was clearly a Guatemalan family with boys about the same age practicing. And all of a sudden, I noticed that this man has a big bandage on his whole arm. It looks bad. So I went over to get the kids to play together, and also to say, well, what happened to you? He was working on big tractor trailer motors, engines. And the boss refused to get a particular piece of safety equipment that could have held up this transmission, which was 1,200 pounds. And the boss didn't have it because he was cheap. And instead it just was held up by a strap. Strap broke and fell on the man's arm. He went off to the hospital. He had to have reconstructive surgery. But when the hospital called the workplace, the owner said, that man never worked here, I don't know who you're talking about. So I heard this story, and there are lawyers who specialize in this kind of workplace issue. So George Mueller got on the case, and the man ultimately was awarded $6,000. He still doesn't have full motility, but there was an ambulance run to the place. It was pretty obvious. Kind of hard to hide that kind of documentation. I had gone with him to pick up his tools with two able-bodied guys who could pick up these heavy tools. I saw the boss greet the man by name. Yeah, I think he knew him. But my friend had never heard of OSHA. He had no idea that workers' comp exists. And so if you're undocumented, who's going to tell you that? And especially in that kind of a small shop. The number of roofers who fall to their deaths because they're not wearing harnesses. So the Interfaith Worker Center did a workplace safety program for transformations a few years ago, and part of it was, yeah, if you're a roofer, your boss is obligated by law to have you wear harnesses and have them properly attached. Nobody had ever told this man that, and he went to the boss the next day and said, if you don't give us harnesses, immediately, I'm gonna call OSHA. And OSHA does respond. I actually called on a group of white roofers who were being very macho without harnesses. They knew they should have them. And they gave me a rough road when I suggested they put them on. I called OSHA and OSHA came out. And the owner of the company got a $14,000 fine. So those kinds of things, we talk about word of mouth, things happening in Carthage, that gets around. But other things happen in families get separated. So I bet every undocumented immigrant you know knows someone who has been deported, okay? And that means a father is gone and now a mother is responsible for, in her case, 5 children. And that's really hard. And just the fear, am I going to come home today and my mother or my father is not going to be there? Or, what did he do wrong? What happened? It's also one of the things that Hamilton County makes available is child care vouchers. Well, you can't get, it's very difficult for immigrants who are low income to get child care vouchers. And the flip side is there are a lot of young immigrant women who were not able to finish high school who are amazing with children. And if they could get their entry-level certificate, which they could study and test for in Spanish, to be child care workers, it would totally change the issues here that families are facing. But as it is, especially without vouchers, low-income immigrant workers, their children often are put into situations that are less than ideal. And I want to get back to my friend here talking about victimization.